Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is Joshua Kahn with the news. First, an update on Derry Heights mega mansion, Daisy Yellow. Despite licensing being approved weeks ago, no physical construction appears to have taken place on the property. According to Ed Gentry, head of the Derry Local Laborers Union, Mr. Sandoval has opted to fly in a team of highly trained obstetricians from around the country to ensure his home is born with the best of care. As we all know, listeners, houses being born bad is a rising concern. This is why I hired a doula for my home birth. You're listening to Derry Public Radio.
This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, C.M. Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hello, everybody.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are covering part 2 of Rose Red, the TV miniseries. Josh, take it away.
Oh, man. This episode is kind of weird.
Things
real weird.
Really ratchet up eventually.
We really turn it from a 5 to a 7 in this episode. We join back with our team of psychics as they arrive at Rose Red and unpack and begin the tour of Rose Red, which immediately the coolest thing we've seen so far, because all of the nifty, the mirrored library, the upside down room, the perspective hallway,
very Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of crazy stuff. Here it is.
Not enough house stuff, arguably.
I would completely agree with that. There's kind of a cool solarium. There's the library, hands down. I want that library.
Yeah, it's a huge round room. Every wall is books, top to bottom, and the floor is mirrors. So even when you look down, you see more books.
Yeah, that one set piece was really the highlight of this episode.
That was $1 million set piece.
And that's it for this episode.
It does get into the plot pretty quick, because as they're going on this tour, we have all of our psychics, including Annie, with them, and we know right away, because as soon as she steps into the house, we get a really crazy zoom shot.
It was 4 zooms.
It was a very strange shot of the camera rushing towards Annie and the doors slamming shut.
But then they never show anybody opening those doors and getting her. The next scene, they're all just walking, and she's with them.
Yeah, well, she was inside. Was she?
Did
she get flared outside?
She had wandered off down another hall, and those doors shut. Because she had walked down a hall, and they look at her, and it zooms towards her down a hall.
Okay, this highlights a problem with this episode of the show. Is there were so many times where I'm like, where is everyone in relation to each other?
Which, is that intentional? Because the house is always changing.
Let's consider that it is.
Okay.
Because that makes it a cool choice instead of just kind of confusing.
Well, and they make sure they tether themselves, they have a piece of rope around a banister before they even go upstairs. And as they're walking, they are leaving this rope trail with the carabiners so they can find their way back, because Rose Red, we talked about earlier, can change on a whim. It can become whatever it wants to become.
Yeah, it'll Hogwarts on you.
Right.
Switch up.
And I believe, CM, you counted how many staircases?
There were at least 6 flights.
6 flights of stairs.
Because there's that one shot that's a shot top down a spiral staircase. And yeah, it's it goes on a really long time. That there's no point in that building that was that tall.
That, from the outside, that looks like a 3, maybe 4-story building.
Yeah.
It's half Hogwarts, half TARDIS.
Yeah.
Bigger on the inside.
Definitely TARDIS. But after they've gone into the mirror library. Well, let's before we get to that, let's talk about what happens in the mirror library. It's the first time something actually spooky happens, because we are here to find ghosts. And if this series is like teaching me anything, it's going to be a long time before we get to any ghosts.
Nope.
You know? No,
You
it's
would
not.
think that.
You would think, because the only thing is to prove that there's ghosts.
And they walk in, and there it is.
Yeah.
They get a lot of proof constantly, all the time.
Almost
right.
immediately.
They are walking down, before they reach the mirror hallway, they are walking down this hallway that it's like...
The perspective hallway.
Yeah, like, isn't there one of those in Willy Wonka?
Yeah.
Where you're walking down and the perspective changes and it gets smaller as you walk down.
I just thought the lady who plays Bones was getting taller.
No, instead Bones gets real confused and she's like, oh, this is making me dizzy. It's just a hallway that gets smaller. Calm down, Bones. And they open up a door that's hidden in the wall and there's a disembodied screaming. And they're like, huh, okay, let's head on.
That's so powerful. Like, it's blowing all this wind out, and Annie just yells at it to stop, and it stops. All right.
Yeah, no, I wish we were recording that. They were just like, huh.
They never have a normal reaction to any of these things. And not even the professor, I can't remember her name already.
Who cares?
Joyce. Because Joyce is specifically there to find this stuff. And all these things happen, and she's kind of like looking at it, smiling. That's it.
Yeah.
This disembodied scream is like, yeah, let's go find some proof, guys. So we get to the mirror room, and we find Bollinger's camera is laying there on the floor. And so they know he was here somewhere. They know he's in the house somewhere. They're standing there, and all of a sudden, light starts to come up from the middle of the floor.
Yeah, and it's calling to Annie, and she's slowly, so slowly, walking towards it. And it's not like they could have used the space because this room is very large. But no, they're all sort of clumped together in this tight spot. And she's walking with her hand stretched out, and the ghost keeps calling to her. And her sister's like, no, don't. Somebody stop her. And everyone's just watching her and watching the ghost. She's a child. What are we doing?
Yeah, they really try to feed her to that ghost.
Yeah, right off the bat.
To the point where not Eccleston reaches out and stops her sister from going to her. Rachel starts going forward to grab Annie because she's not getting away. I can't overstate how slow she's walking towards this ghost. But not Eccleston's like, nah, you stay with us. Like, let's watch it. Let's
see what happens.
Yeah, let's let this play out.
And then Kathy fatal frames the ghost by snapping a bunch of pictures, and it spooks the ghost away.
Even though they were recording, Steve fumbles out the video camera.
It's like he's never touched a camera before.
Is he a ghost?
I would like to believe a ghost would be better at holding a video camera than Steve is in this situation. Because finally, Doc is like, record, run tape. And it takes him a full minute to get this thing open.
The thing is, like, the main focus is on the ghost girl, and you can kind of see Steve off to the right. And my full focus was pulled off center to him, watching him as though he's never seen this camera. And it's like, we never talked about how to work this.
Yeah, like the director was like, okay, you have a camera, but we have no reason, like you can't videotape it because that would solve the whole movie. So just do business in the background.
Just do business with the camera.
And you'll be like, oh, I couldn't get it. Except then he does, and he still records it, and they don't go home.
Well, because later she says that she reviewed it, and it's garbled.
Sure.
The video's garbled, and you can't make out what's happening.
Question.
Yes.
Do you think it was really garbled, or did she lie so they could stay there longer?
I think that's very possible.
Ooh, yeah.
Or at least would be if this second episode did any work at developing her as a character at all.
We got
The
that
doc
scene where
is-
she's
Yeah.
giggling.
Barely in the second episode. Like, barely.
She's there she does what she did in the first episode. She tells some stories and
Gets mad at Steve for telling her stories.
yeah.
Telling her stories about his life and family.
And then she walks around for the last 20 minutes smiling to herself with headphones on and a movement meter that she's moving around.
Thinking about
Oh,
ghosts.
can we talk about the people counter?
Well, we need to
Oh
talk
my
about
God.
all of this very high-tech psychology equipment that they're using.
We cannot lose focus that it is from the psychology
Oh, wait,
department.
wait. Okay. But first, something cool happens when they leave the mirrored library. They open the door, and that is not the hall that they use to get there. And so they start walking, and they're following their rope, and their rope just leads into a wall.
That shot is really cool.
That was actually very cool, followed by something very dumb. Because when it gets to that point, they're walking down, and they're like, things have changed. This is wrong, and they turn this corner, and the house is just eating their way back downstairs, and it's very unnerving. It's very, in that situation, I'd be scared out of my mind.
I thought it was the first step in them having to venture off the beaten path with no safety net.
Exactly, which would have been really interesting, and a chance for a lot of really spooky stuff. But what happens is Annie uses her magic to force push a hallway into existence.
Still not the perspective hallway, so good job, Annie.
Yeah. Can't even bring back the right hallway.
I try to describe what that looked like, because I can't.
It looked like a hotel.
Yeah,
that
I
went
agree with
on
that.
forever.
Yeah,
Like,
that went on forever.
I'm sure in 2002, maybe that effect would have been really cool. Maybe,
Sure.
Probably.
I bet it was pretty cool.
but it happened, and I was just like, okay. Once again, and everyone's just like, she did it.
They start applauding.
Yeah, they just look at it and they're like, well, she made an infinite hallway for us, so...
And then it jump cuts to them in a room together on the main floor.
Eating sandwiches.
There's no explanation of like, that's still not the hallway. How did they get back?
We forgot to talk about the upside down spite office.
That's a great name for a band. I like that a lot.
That's my favorite. Like, I like the library, but I've got a thing for upside down rooms. I've always wanted an upside down room.
I've always wanted a ball pit.
Yeah.
Are we just talking about
Okay,
stuff we like?
Sorry.
For some reason, I get yours, Ben. But Josh,
It's super cool. And I love that. So Ellen Rimbauer had it's his office, but upside down. What does she say? That she did it to like
kind of poke fun
Poke
that he's
fun at
always at the office. But what was cool, when they first walked into it, they were like, whoa. And it looked like they were upside down. I thought that the house just pulled some weird trick. I didn't know it was a room that was specifically built to be upside down. And I was like, how is Rose Red doing this?
and the
But
camera
no.
spins around.
Yeah.
I love about that that they like explained that, and he was like, "Oh, did he get it?" And like, probably not.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great-
that's a lot of work for a joke he
Great,
didn't
yeah,
get.
great joke, Ellen.
I guess if you have
The room's upside down.
ever
Get it?
expanding rooms, you can just waste them on bad
You know,
jokes.
that's a really good point.
I was workshopping some things with this room.
Yeah, you can just give up on it and be like, Rose Red will just move this room somewhere out of the way if they don't like it. That's fine.
So they have lunch, and they talk about the house some more.
Yeah, we find the room they're in is like the billiard room, which was also the party room for her yearly party. And we find out there were celebrities and politicians and the who's who of Seattle would come to these parties until this movie actress went missing. And there's a picture of her on the wall and just like a brief shot of like a brief flashback of her walking
Playing
around
pool.
smoking and playing pool. And it's like, she was sexy, and then all we found was an earring. That's the backstory we got on that character, who I believe we see later.
Oh.
In Emery's bed.
Yeah. If that is that who that's supposed to be? Okay. He did. He says something like that, but my brain was like, how do you know?
Inspired a lot of mean virgin jokes.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I mean, we might as well talk about that night.
Oh, about the nighttime. Well, before we get to that, we should talk about the dinner party.
our beloved
the room counter
cameo. Oh yeah, the room counter. So they're eating sandwiches?
Well, lunch was sandwiches.
Wait, what was dinner?
And then it just cuts forward to that night. And
the power goes out. No, man.
It's so confusing.
It's so hard to figure out how this movie happens.
I am not going to lie. About now, I checked out pretty hard. I tried my best, guys, but boy, howdy.
I got it. Okay, because I said, hey, is this like the club? Because they're in this parlor and there's a big fireplace.
Yeah.
And the fireplace has some decorative stuff on it. And I was like, ooh, are those words? Are those the words? And they're all sitting around the fireplace and they're chatting and apparently not eating sandwiches because that was much earlier. And they order pizza or something. And so a delivery guy shows up and he's kind of standing in the shadows. And you're like, why is this person in the shadows? What's the big reveal? And he steps forward. And it's Stephen King.
Stephen King cameo.
He really
and
did
they are
it.
jerks to him.
Oh God, they're such dicks to him. But to be fair, he gives them the pizza and then stands in that doorway for a solid 7 minutes.
He was probably waiting for his tip.
That could be.
Joyce looks cheap.
Yeah. Well, she's forking out all these thousands of dollars for these people. She didn't have the money for pizza. That was fun though.
So as they're telling stories, they have this people wait,
Okay.
was it just called a people counter?
Okay, I wrote it at this point. Hold on. I have to find my notes.
Which I assume is to...
Okay, at this point, they're eating dinner. And this is what my notes have devolved into. Stephen King delivers pizza. A gay cowboy hangs himself. People proximity counter. This is going off the goddamn rails. What? I literally missed the beginning of this. What was with the gay cowboy? Please tell me.
It was John Rimbauer's old partner who...
No, because Wait, yes.
Yeah,
no,
it was his old business partner. And it was just a throwaway line of like, the only thing I know about him is he really had a thing for cowboys. And Nick responds with my favorite line of this episode. He liked chaps and chaps. I love it.
And then we get a flashback to Steve's grandpa.
Yep.
Who was John Rimbauer's son.
Yes.
Okay. His grandpa and his grandpa's sister, who is the little girl with the withered arm.
April.
Who is also the ghost.
Yes.
From earlier. Should have mentioned that. That's probably important. Standing, just staring at a cowboy climbing a ladder.
And he's fully decked cowboy. And not like not like a rugged, but like a fancy cowboy. Like he's like clean white boots with pastels. And just the fanciest cowboy.
He just slowly climbs a ladder, takes his hat off, hands it to this little kid, hangs himself. While these kids stare at him.
He gives April a rose.
Yeah, he tosses a rose and she catches the rose. And then they just watch him hang himself.
And this, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with anything.
I guess.
Also, I didn't do the counting, but I think this does not match up with the numbers we learned in the first episode. Because we learned that of all of the deaths in the house, there were 23 deaths, 5 men, and 18 women. I am almost positive we have learned about more than 5 men dying.
Well, we had the guy with the window pane, the construction guy, the guy who got shot, the guy with the apple, cowboy.
And there was another guy. During the construction. I don't remember what happened to him, but there was another construction worker death.
I thought there were only 3.
No, we only talked about 3 last episode because I couldn't remember the one that was between there was something between the window and the apple.
I don't.
So we're at our.
So we're at 5.
Okay.
If we're remembering everything correct. No, because John Rimbauer fell out of the window. through. So
that's 5.
That's 6.
Are you sure there was a guy?
I'm pretty sure.
Because I only remember 3.
The point
Sure,
is that why did we need this?
We didn't.
Why did we need this gay cowboy?
Didn't need.
Which is not a sentence I thought I'd ever say. Because, hey, more gay cowboys the merrier, in my opinion.
Wasn't the statue of April out in the courtyard? Wasn't she holding a rose?
She was. That could be something. Because
Rose Fred?
It was a sentient rose named Fred.
That was too loud. Oh, what a dumb thought that was. But anyway, what was I talking about?
We were talking about the people counter, that device.
Oh, yeah.
It marks the temperature of the room. And then I saw there was another measurement that it had. And then at the bottom, it says people proximity counter.
Yes.
That this is a piece of equipment the psych department owns.
And my joke was that it's used to take attendance for class. What else are they using it for?
Because it needs to be optimum temperature in the classroom.
That's literally the only possible use for this non-existent piece of technology.
A lazy professor just doesn't want to count heads. Says 200. Okay, good.
That seems right.
But they keep cutting to this dumb, looks like a radio with just a printout. It says like 6. There's 6 people in the room, and it slowly starts ticking up. Who cares?
And I literally can't remember if anything happens as a result of that. Because I know it goes up to
everything
99.
explodes.
The electricity explodes.
The electricity. That's true. That's a dumb phrase, but it is 100% what happened.
Oh, and then the April, the ghost, comes back.
Yes.
And is like, Annie. And Annie's slowly reaching towards her.
And then Steve throws a cup at her and he runs away.
That was my favorite way of getting rid of a ghost.
And then Emery gets power blasted by the fireplace and falls down. And then a bassinet rolls out.
Okay.
And there's hold on. There's a Raggedy Andy doll and some dominoes in it.
Which
that happened.
Is well established that Annie loves dominoes.
This is the second episode. When we were coming in to record, I was like, boy, a whole bunch of things happened, I think. Because, now that we go through it bit by bit, a lot of shit happened in that scene very quickly. None of it made sense.
But so much of it's just, I don't get it. I don't understand the importance of so much of this. It's weirdly hard to
follow, right? It's like...
That is my chief problem with this, is that as I'm watching it, I'm kind of confused as to time. And that gets even worse as we go into the night, which we'll talk about everybody. We get to see how everybody sleeps.
The nighttime is all on you guys.
I think that is intentionally disjointed to make us feel like we don't know what's going on.
Right. It's kind of maddening. But that segment very specifically is very confusing. But even then, following the chain of events, or like the time between scenes, was just so hard to keep track of. I just couldn't find like a grounding frame of reference for why are we doing what we're doing and why does it matter? Mm-hmm. And that is a problem for me. Like getting confused with like the doppelgangers that are coming up, that's one thing. But when I can't follow even the basic timeline when things aren't going crazy, I find that's just kind of a problem for me. It really it takes me out of it. I might as well have seen Seattle in the background. Mm-hmm. Just pulled all the way out.
Well, I wasn't paying attention at all during the night sequences. So, CM,
they go to
remind me.
So after the bassinet incident, they go to bed, right?
That happened.
And I think they buddied up. Mm-hmm. So obviously Annie and Rachel, I refuse to call her that other name, and so does Steve later, are sharing a room.
For good reason.
And Kathy and Bones are sharing a room. I don't remember her name. Pam. So Emery is asleep by himself, and he wakes up because...
well, he's following Bones.
Oh, yeah. We come
dreaming.
into him dreaming. Yeah. So he's like it looks like an attic with Bones, and there's some weird chemistry between them. And then he's like, hey, Bones, will you go to bed with me? And she's like, no, and disappears.
She's like, your mom's behind you. And he's like, where?
Which,
What made him more into it?
Is it? No, I mean, isn't it kind of interesting that he's thinking about sex and then she's like, your mom's behind you.
In his own dream, yeah.
Does he want to? Okay.
Interesting you should say that. I was on the forum.
Oh my God.
All right.
Call back to the long walk.
Oh, man. Ben's our resident Oedipal research expert.
So he wakes up from this nightmare where he thought he was with Bones and about to get some, but he's not.
And he gets attacked by...
Well, he gets up and he walks to the window and he looks out, and in the courtyard he sees a silhouette of a woman standing there. And then he lays back down, and as soon as he lays down, we see a skeletal hand work its way across his torso.
The longest fingers I've ever seen on a fake skeleton.
And we look over, and he sees the movie star, who is like a mummified corpse at this point.
Puppet. Mummified corpse puppet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what she says to him.
I believe she says, wanna fuck?
Call me mommy.
He does what Emery does, like his coping mechanism is to close his eyes and just repeat, not there, not there, not there. And when he opens his eyes, the thing's usually gone. And so that's what he does. And then he opens his eyes and it's gone, but then he pulls back the sheets and there's an imprint where that creature was lying. So he knows it's real. Then we have, and everything with Bones is so confusing.
Very.
Because the first thing we see Bones get out of bed with Kathy and leave the room. And then we jump to Bones waking up in a different room because Kathy's knocking at the door. But then we jump back to Kathy in her bed with something trying to upskirt her bed.
And Kathy, the Kathy that's at Bones' door, tells her, you got to come with me. I found something out. It explains so much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the Kathy doppelganger takes Bones out to that fountain and presumably drowns her. Like that's...
Well, we don't know
kind
that
of
yet.
I mean, that's... As
we
far
assume
as
that's going to happen.
Well, she takes her out, and then we don't see Bones for a long time.
Yeah,
like she just walks out of the movie.
Yeah, we see her slowly walking into that like fountain area,
and then it cuts
when
to Annie and
does
Rachel.
The thing, and she sees her. Oh my God!
So, Annie and Rachel are in bed, and Annie wakes up and the closet door opens and there's a mirror on the inside of the closet door, and she sees a vision of Bones in the fountain standing looking up at something. And then April comes walking through and she's singing to her.
That shot was so hard to parse. I had no idea what the fuck I was looking at. Because like
you can't blink. You have to be like, if you blink, it's confusing.
It's like
that's what I look for in a movie.
The shot, like I could not figure out why she was seeing Bones. I couldn't tell it was a mirror. It looked like a weird shot from a 90s music video where she was just like another, like floating in a, you know what I mean?
It's like Annie has everybody's psychic powers because that's what Nick's powers look like. Like that's what his psychic visions look like. So it's almost, I don't know, like it's almost like she has everybody else's gift also somehow.
She's rogue.
Yeah. She's a psychic rogue.
So
Ben doesn't like that.
Annie gets out of bed and she's slowly reaching out towards April. And then a skeletal hand reaches, like grabs Annie's ankle from under the bed. And Annie, cool as a cucumber, just sort of crouches down and looks under the bed.
Yeah.
Which wakes up Rachel, who gets her flashlight and crouches down and looks under the bed. And she's like, What are you doing? Did you open the closet door? Close the closet door. I don't like it open.
You know I can't sleep when the closet door is open. Wait, what?
Do they sleep together at home?
Maybe. Who knows?
Well, her whole identity is based on her sister.
That's
so
true.
Yeah.
She
Probably.
wants everyone to call her Sissy because she's Annie's sister.
Call me Annie's sister.
When she wants to be formal, Sissy, oh, please, call me Annie's sister.
Sissy, please. Sissy's my father's name. Call me Annie's sister.
I love
So
it.
stupid.
It is so dumb. So that wraps that sequence up. Then I think we go back to Kathy, who the thing that was under the rug is now under her sheets. And she's like just she's full spread eagle laying in bed. And it's
I'm a single
coming
woman.
right
Come
down.
at me.
She is straight up about to get evil deaded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just before it reaches the point of no return, that's not what I should call it. She grabs the sheets and throws them back. Nothing's there.
Do you think she was disappointed?
I wish it would have cut back to her and she just would have been like,
Dang.
Do you
They
wish
should've
you would have
looked.
done in Ghostbusters when Dan Aykroyd has say just like she just covers up, goes cross-eyed, and lays back down.
I would have been so delighted if they had done a callback to that.
it turns out it's the gay cowboy and he was like, nope. And he just leaves.
Ooh. Put me to
God.
Steve's room.
Oh, God, it's so ridiculous. A couple times, I think Bones and Emery also see Bollinger. Bollinger's like a jump scare that cuts us to a different scene twice.
Yeah.
Rule of threes, guys. They need it one more time. And so, like, it makes that whole night sequence just super disorienting. The thing is, we suddenly just jump cut to morning, I guess. We jump cut to Annie playing with dominoes in the solarium.
Yeah, either that or I blacked out. For a little bit.
We all must have blacked
Either-
out then. 'cause-
Equally possible.
This is the problem I have with any haunted house kind of movie or show. I talked to you guys outside of the episode about I just finished watching Haunting of Hill House. And the reason that it was so hard for me to get into is those first 2 or 3 episodes. There's always, the ghost is here, it's coming for you, and at the last minute, it's just gone. There's no consequence. Like, they build it up because you can't kill these main characters off this early in the show or in the movie. So it's a fine line that you can walk between something being super eerie and then disappearing and then bringing something to an aggressive conclusion and then just backing out of it for functionally no reason. And that is a lot of what almost this entire night sequence, except for the fact that one person does die.
We don't see it though. So
Yeah. It's well, and the reason we don't see it is the worst because we see Bones again before we find out anything.
Oh yeah, so they can't show us her
Right.
dying. Okay.
So the next morning, Annie is playing with her dominoes, and now she has 2 dolls that she named after the April and Steve's grandpa, which is weird. And
And there's a new room off of the kitchen.
oh yeah, like a wine cellar has just appeared, and it was half open, and Nick was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this." Now, I completely forgot we didn't mention this because it happens at the very beginning, and there's all that other stuff happening. In that first tour, they find Bollinger's cell phone in the solarium, and they hit redial, call it back, and find that it was Professor Dean. And they called and left him a message. Then at breakfast, Steve and Nick are talking, and he says he's going to call him again and like try to get him to call back because they still haven't found or seen Bollinger, and like they want to get him to come down and see what they should do. Pretty much.
Nick makes a good argument that the longer they go without knowing if he's okay and not calling the police, the more peculiar it looks for them.
Right. And we cut away and we cut back and we hear the end of that voicemail. We hear the end of the message he leaves that just basically says, I think it would be beneficial for you to come down so we can kind of figure this out. You call me back at this number. You know it because it's yours. Hangs up the phone. Then we have the weirdest scene, which is saying so much. This, is it romantic scene between Steve and a 15-year-old and then his sister?
It is. I'm not saying it's right, but there is some chemistry.
It is weirdly flirtatious.
Yeah.
Steve comes down in the morning, and Annie is playing in the solarium with her dolls and these dominoes. And Annie has this thing that she does. She did it earlier with Eccleston. And when people say hi, and apparently men say hi to her, she covers her face because
if she doesn't, they flirt with her.
She doesn't like strangers.
Yeah. So Steve comes down. He says hi. She covers her face, and he stares at her. And she slowly uncovers her eyes. And it's gross. It's weird. There is a very weird energy between them.
Yep.
Yeah. That's all that needs to be said.
Annie uses her powers to play Glenn Miller out of a flower.
And float a domino.
Speaking of fucking weird, that is not telekinesis. That's nothing.
That's
what
magic.
What is that?
That's straight up magic.
She's a wizard.
I thought that it was the house doing that.
No,
for some reason.
She's doing it because you know it is because Rachel treats it so normally, like out of a flower this time. She also levitates things, and she's got telekinesis and psychokinesis, but those are the least important things about her.
Disagree.
Strongly disagree. And she pulls Steve aside and she tells Steve the story we got at the very beginning with the raining of the rocks. And now we get a flashback. God, I had to watch this scene twice, and I'm angry about it. Apparently, Rachel somehow leaked the drawing that Annie had done of the boulders in front of the house to the newspaper, and the local newspaper on the front page printed a side-by-side of the drawing and the actual photo of the house.
Yeah, with the headline, Did a dog bite cause stones to rain from the sky?
Yes.
Did a little girl being bit by a dog cause stones to rain from What fucking newspaper is this? God, no wonder print is dead. What is that?
So Rachel and her dad are having a legitimate argument, I feel, as to, like, this is insane. Like, something bad is going to happen because of this. Annie's response is to freeze all of the water in the house, causing the sink to explode and almost spike her mother to death, and cause all the sprinklers in the yard to explode and shoot ice spikes
into giant pillars of ice,
where people on the street are just casually driving by as this is happening.
Like they weren't told the special effect was going to be added.
No, nobody was watching. Nobody had somebody on set to ask cars to hold for that shot.
Oh, it would have been way better if that car just like suddenly veered off the road.
Right.
Slammed into one of the parked cars.
It would have been awesome. and we get this story about Annie's crazy powers, which also freezing water is not telekinesis.
Not telekinesis. Cryokinesis, maybe?
I'll go with cryokinesis.
Not a
thing. Now we get to revisit Professor Dean. Not his name, but I've given up.
Now.
It is now.
We're an episode and a half into this. His name is Dean now.
It's Professor Dean. And he checks his voicemail. The first voicemail he gets is exactly as we heard it. The second voicemail is in Steve's voice, but it is not the voicemail he left. The voicemail he hears is that Bollinger slit his wrists and spelled out his name in his own blood. And he needs to get down there immediately so we can decide what to do about it. Which was, I thought, a mistake at first. Like, because which is just a testament to how this movie's put together, how this series was put together, that initially I was like, no, the call ends with him saying something else. I can't believe they fucked it up. They had the script. And then Ben reacted, and I was like, oh, that's on purpose. That's the house drawing him in. At the same time, my favorite character, Emery's mother, can't get a hold of her son, so she drives through downtown Seattle to Rose Red.
I do enjoy how they're setting up for every character we know to converge into one place. I thought that was a neat trick.
I mean, yeah, but why? Why does the house feel like it needs to kill everyone we've met? The house doesn't know that we've only met them in this movie.
I don't know. Okay, so when they're in the greenhouse earlier, Rachel, I think, points out that the flowers weren't at the back of the greenhouse yesterday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the house is drawing people to it to regenerate. Like when those people die, it starts to kind of come back to life.
So it's trying to pull any connection.
Mm-hmm.
So if it fed on everybody there, it would be reaching out even to the next step, like a web, pulling in.
Yeah, because it hasn't killed in 35 years.
Sure.
It also reminds me a lot of the ending of It, when all of the extraneous characters start being pulled in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When
is that
Bill's wife gets drawn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's his name? Henry
Bowers.
Gets drawn into the city. Just reminded me a lot of that, which might be giving too much credit to this. But I did like that.
Yeah. The two arrive at the same time, which is great. Very convenient.
I love how Emery's mom bosses Professor Dean.
Yeah.
It's he needs to be bossed
upset
around.
We were denied those two characters meeting and falling in love.
I know.
Hey, man, it's not over yet. There's still plenty of time. If I've learned anything, it's never too late for love.
That's the tagline to this movie. Rose Red. It's never too late for love.
Yep, that's it. They get in. The gate opens itself. Because Emery's mom was trying to get into it and it wouldn't budge. And once they're both there, Professor Dean barely touches it and it opens right up. And then Emery's mom almost runs him over because she's so anxious to get in and find her little Emmers. I don't like that I said that. And they pull in, and somebody runs real fast past the front end. And it was Bollinger.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell, it was a skinny dude. Runs past. She slams on her brakes and goes, "Emery? Nah, man, you don't know what your son looks like or is physically capable of."
Sorry, that got me.
You look at Emery, he's never moved that fast in his whole life. And she just starts shouting, she slams on her brakes, which causes an accident. And so they're both bleeding a little, and she just takes off running. And for some reason, Professor Dean follows her.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
weird.
sure why. But that was very weird.
So Emery's mom is running through the woods, yelling after him, can't seem to catch up to him. And Professor Dean is running after her, yelling for her, can't seem to catch up to her. And all of a sudden she hears something behind her. And we kind of see the silhouette of a very dirty looking person. It's Bollinger. She turns around and he kills her or
he
knocks
goes
her
at
out
her and it cuts to
or
black.
something. Yeah. And then Professor Dean somehow, he gets lost, but then he makes his way back to the main entry in his car. And then there's the best friend. So there's Sukina, and she's like, "Hey, man, we're all waiting for you inside. Come on."
Yeah.
I'm
super
paraphrasing.
Casual. Yeah.
And so he follows her inside. During this time, I don't remember if it cuts back and forth, but Emery's playing pool in the lounge and in the game room or whatever. And he hears his mom, and he does that thing where he closes his eyes. He's like, "Not real, not real, not real." Because he thinks that it's just the house or the ghosts messing with him or whatever.
And
because to Emery, his mother showing up is just as terrifying as a corpse trying to have sex with him.
Yep.
Which,
But this sets his these hallucinations that are not hallucinations, because his mom sets up what happens next, because as this keeps cutting back and forth to all these different things, at one point Annie goes to the window and she sees Vic in his pajamas talking super casually to no one, which is just another weird thing we've seen Vic do. And I like that all of us were like, yeah, that seems like Vic.
It was cool though, because we see through Annie's eyes that he's talking to himself, like no one else is there, and then it cuts to him and he's talking to Bones
in her nightgown. And they're like flirting, which should have been his first clue. She's flirting with him, and she is like, I've got to show you something. Let's go. Like, takes him by the hand.
She says it explains so much.
Yes.
The same thing that the doppelganger told Bones the
Yeah.
day before.
And they go out, and she takes him to the fountain, and then he looks around and she's gone. And then he looks in the water and he sees her lying in the water.
This is the best scene of the show so
Hands
far.
down
Yes.
the spookiest thing that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So she's floating face up in the water, and he
Beneath
makes
the
his
statue.
way, beneath the statue of Eleanor.
Yeah.
And he makes his way in, and he's freaking out, and he touches her nightgown, and her body's not there. It's just her nightgown. And so as he's starting to make his way back out, the statue of Eleanor is coming to life. And it's a cool effect. They do a good job.
Very cool.
She's moving her hands, and you can hear the marble or whatever cracking. And then he starts to walk away, and he's going behind the statue. Statue Eleanor rips off her statue face.
Fucking awesome.
And just slowly turns it. And so we get this shot of him walking towards the camera, and she's in the background with her statue face watching him go.
It's so cool. It's a really cool effect.
Yeah.
And he has the only reasonable reaction to that, which is to have a heart attack.
Have a heart attack and die. Okay, so yeah, all this stuff is happening. It's a lot of stuff all happening at once. Once again, I was half paying attention. And I got the sense, maybe you guys can back me up, it's very farcical, you know what I mean? Where it's like, these people are running over here, and these people are running over here, and it's all happening simultaneously. And it almost reminded me of the movie Clue.
Yeah, okay.
Except boring. The end. That's it.
Yep, end of statement.
But
Sure.
it has this feeling of like, if there wasn't any connection between any of it. Does that make sense?
What I have found with it so far is that it doesn't build tension. The way all of these scenes are supposed to build tension, it's just not there.
Yeah, it's just stuff happening.
When the ghosts show up, it didn't. I wasn't spooked or scared. When they were wandering around, I wasn't like tense, like, oh no, what's going to happen? And I don't know if that's just a product of it being in early 2000s.
Yeah, it was on ABC.
Yeah.
So like, it couldn't be that scary, you know?
Yeah, that was, nowadays we get something on like Netflix and, The Haunting of Hill House, and they can make it however they want to make it. But that's my biggest problem with it so far. There's no tension.
Well, and
I completely agree.
The thing that should be the most tense scene in this episode should have been this scene at the very end when Vic is having a heart attack, because they set those dominoes in place where Vic runs to the window where Emery is and is pounding on the window, yelling at Emery that he's having a heart attack and he needs him to let him in.
And get his medicine.
But because of what we set up with his mother thinking that was a hallucination, Emery thinks this is another hallucination. So he flat out, this man is begging for help on the other side of this window. He turns his back on him, plugs his ears, and just starts repeating to himself. That should be the most tense scene, and I felt so little. I am the last person who should be asking this question, but
Okay.
is part of the problem the soundtrack?
What soundtrack?
The soundtrack to the show.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. I did not,
Because
it
music
did not register in
It's
my
not
head at all.
creating an atmosphere.
Yeah, music creates atmosphere and it can create that tension. And like I said, I don't know anything about music. I don't have an ear for it really, but it still makes me feel atmosphere and it still makes me feel tension when it's done right. Like there are movies that I've seen 100 times that have really scary scenes, and because the sound design creates that atmosphere, I'm nervous every time. Thinking back on it, I could easily just throw yakety sax into the background of this scene, and my brain would be like, yeah, that's probably what the music was behind it, because it has made no impression on me.
Arguably, I would 100% prefer this movie with yakety sax. I am of the belief that yakety sax would make everything better.
We'll recut it then.
Yeah.
We'll turn this into a comedy yet.
The house is really cool, though.
The house is very
The set pieces are so cool.
And, okay, so here's one last thing. Going into the third part, we really tore this apart this episode. I feel like the first episode I enjoyed a lot because it was so kind of goofy and like, what is this? And this part was not very good. The third part, I want to go in with a more positive attitude. Are you guys with me? Because
Definitely.
I feel kind of bad. While I was only half paying attention, I was, of course, on the IMDb trivia page.
Like you do.
And this movie was actually originally supposed to be a feature-length theatrical release movie.
Oh.
Because Steven Spielberg reached out to Stephen King and said, I want to make the scariest haunted house movie ever made, and specifically looked for Stephen King to write the script. That could have been unbelievable. Like, right?
Yeah.
But in, I want to say, when was it? 2001 or so?
2001 was when it was shooting.
This came out in 2002. So it would have been 2001. After a little while, they had creative differences. They disagreed. Steven Spielberg wanted it to have action sequences, which is very strange because a scary haunted house movie with action sequences sounds very strange to me. And Stephen King wanted a more cerebral haunted house movie. And so Steven Spielberg left the project. Stephen King bought his script back and then was hit by a van.
Oh.
That's that time.
Yes. And after he was in recovery, this screenplay was apparently one of the things that he used as his recovery for his writing. This was what he did while he was convalescent, basically, to hone himself to be able to work again. So, I feel that maybe we've been a little unfair.
What makes this a very interesting point to me is that this whole time I've been thinking that for Stephen King, the writing of this miniseries feels so broad strokes. And that's what it so confusing. I'm so used to King's deliberate nature, but phrasing it that way, like this being kind of like a therapeutic, like an exercise almost, makes a lot of sense.
It feels less like when I think of true horror fan, feels less like it's for true horror fans and more like it's for a general public.
Which is very true. Once again, it was on ABC in 2002. So
it seems like a project he had fun doing, which is also something you want in something that is supposed to be therapeutic and recovering. Like, it seems like something he had a good time with. He probably just enjoyed writing this story.
That said, I still did not enjoy this. So
that's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. Join us next time for part 3 of Rose Red. For Joshua Kahn and Benjamin Graham, I'm CM Alexander, and I have to show you something. It explains so much. Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thanks for listening to Rose Red Part 2. We hope you enjoyed it. This episode is brought to you by a podcast we've been listening to recently, Online Warriors Podcast. They are a weekly podcast of 3 charming co-hosts who talk all the nerdy stuff you could possibly want. movies, gaming, technology, entertainment, please give them a listen. They release an episode every Wednesday, and you can find them anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also check them out on their website at onlinewarriorspodcast.com. One of our listeners, Katie, sent us a message with an interesting theory about Rose Red. She pointed out that at the end of Carrie, there's a little girl mentioned, a little girl with telekinesis by the name of Annie. She would be about the right age for our Annie in Rose Red. She was born in '86, and this movie came out in 2002. Although it does mention a brother and not a sister. Either it's a different Annie, or just an early inspiration for King, or there's something really dark happening in that family. Where did the brother go? Thanks for pointing out this possible connection, Katie. Let us know what you guys think on our social media at Derry Public Radio, or send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Visit us at constantreaders.org for everything Stephen King and Stephen King adjacent, and check out our Patreon. Please take a moment, if you can, to rate and review us on iTunes so that other listeners can find us. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.